welcome once again to Calaveras Living. Well, if you watch the news each night, it'd be easy to get a little depressed, especially what's happening worldwide, not just in our country, but especially worldwide with just the abominations and the heinous acts of terrorist groups. And I think it concerns all of us at whatever age. And so we're going to talk about that problem tonight, especially about Muslim extremists. And Pastor David Kinney is with us, and he leads the congregation at the First Baptist Church in Angels Camp. I was going to say San Andreas.
That's okay.
But it's good to see you again. And Pastor David was with us a couple of years ago, and we talked about the Muslim culture and about Islam and history. And things have obviously gone downhill, extremely downhill since then. So it's good to see you, Pastor.
Thank you, John. It's so good to be back with you.
Well, I'll put all the questions to you that I ask myself at home and don't have the answers. But maybe just a quick overview. Now, you're very familiar with the Quran, right?
I am. I've studied quite a bit of it, just in comparison, especially the Quran to the Bible, just to know what they know and to know what I know, and to see if there's any legitimate truth in it, and I struggle to be able to find legitimate truth in it. And so it actually helps me to understand the Bible so much better also.
Yeah. Now, when you talk about Muslim culture, we talk the Muslim way of life.
Yeah.
It's not just a religion, it's a whole way of life, sociologically, politically, everything. And I think a lot of people don't understand that it's not just a religion. Because most people in this country, at least, are tolerant of other religions. But when you say you're going to tolerate Muslim religion, you're saying you're going to tolerate a lot more.
Exactly right.
So is there anything in the Quran that justifies some of the acts that are going on now?
Absolutely, there are. And that's what's troubling me within our society today, because we're acting as if the Quran is a book of just peace. Mm-hmm. And it really is not. And it is a book that contains a lot of violence in it. It is a book that chronicles Muhammad's 53 battles that he was in before he died at about 61 years of age. And so it chronicles the spread of Islam throughout what is today Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. And Saudi Arabia is back in the news today because their king, Abdullah, just died.
Yes.
And it's kind of created a vacuum within leadership, and people are very concerned of what will happen with the kingdom because of the radical element that is very powerful in that whole region. And so who knows what will happen now? It'll be very interesting to see.
What really is the difference? This is probably an unfair question, but I don't mind being unfair because you're a nice guy. But Muslim extremists and an average Muslim, just a family trying to get along.
I think that's a great question, John, because I think that's where a lot of the struggle is within media today, and trying to understand what Islam is all about. Remember, the word Islam means to submit. It is a religion of submission, and you submit to Allah, and you submit to the Prophet Muhammad. And the difference between the radicals, which make up about 20% of the religion. Remember, Islam is about 1.6 billion people. Mm. And if you figure in 20% that is radical, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people.
Yes.
That are very dangerous, that are around this world, and that want to eliminate people of the book, as the Quran says, mm-hmm. Jews and Christians.
Yeah.
And so there's a big difference between the nominal Muslim and the radical Muslim. The radical Muslim believes the Quran to the T, follows Muhammad's example to the swing of the sword. And they also then go by what is called the hadiths. And the hadiths are the writings or the interpretations of the Quran, mm-hmm. or of Muhammad's sayings that came on the scene after he died. And if you really want to understand the Quran, then you must read and understand and apply the hadiths. And there's many, many, many hadiths that have been written over the centuries, still being written, as a matter of fact, and added to.
So they're really basically interpretations of what Elijah Muhammad said.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right.
Well, that kind of puts it into perspective. But these radical or extremists, some of them you think really feel they're following their calling.
Oh, without a doubt. Let's just talk about ISIS for a moment.
Yeah.
ISIS is in the news 24/7 now, isn't it? And we're seeing more and more of its expansion throughout the Middle East. And what's very concerning to me is that this political correctness within America, particularly, and even parts of Europe, is turning a blind eye to how dangerous ISIS is and the spread that it already is within the Middle East. And if you notice, they always have a black flag that has white writing on it. Well, there's a very good reason why it's black with the white writing on, and that is because they are following their leader, Muhammad. Muhammad, from every single battle that he fought, remember it was 53, everywhere he went, and when he conquered a city or a town or a village, that black flag went up.
Well, that was his logo, huh?
Exactly right. And it's got a Quranic verses on it. And so, so when you see the radicals like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hezbollah,
Taliban?
absolutely.
What's this new one, Boko Haram?
Boko Haram, that's
Yeah.
in Nigeria, and just as radical, and they all follow their leader, Muhammad.
Are they
to the
tied
T.
together, do you think? Do they have communication much, or are they kind of independent of one another?
I believe that they're very independent of one another because, again, you break them down between Sunni and Shiite, and right now there's just a tremendous struggle between those two groups of Islam today. So I don't think they're in regular communication, but they all have the same idea, and that is to be able to take the world over and set up what is called a caliphate, a state, a complete domination of a local area or a whole region, which they are doing.
They feel it's justifiable to kill infidels?
Without a doubt. And the reason it's justified is because Muhammad did it. Remember 53 battles that he was in before he died. And he went into towns, let's take, for example, if I could just take your audience back to about 625 AD. It's about 550 years after the time of Jesus Christ. And you think about what he did, what Muhammad did. He came into this Jewish town, and it is recorded not by Christian scholars or historians, but by Muslim scholars and historians, that he went in and literally slaughtered anywhere from 500 to 900 Jews with his sword. And then if I could take you a few years later, or later after that, to about 628, and you would find where he went into another village and slaughtered hundreds of Christian and Jews that would not submit to Islam. And if you've noticed also, ISIS, they do mass graves. We've seen that. It's been documented, pictures of it, video of it. Well, guess what? They're also following their leader, Muhammad, because that's exactly what is recorded for us through history now and through Islamic scholars, that he dug these mass graves and literally buried them all right there. And so we're seeing that the radical end is literally following their master, following their leader, following the one who gave them the instructions.
Why is it that some of the clerics, Muslim clerics, do not speak out against this? Are they more for the radicals?
I guess it would probably depend on where they live in the world.
Okay.
If they're in the Middle East, I think they are for the radicals. If they're in maybe Dearborn, Michigan, where there's a large population of Muslims, probably the largest population of Muslims in a city, they would be probably a little bit more moderate. But I think there's real danger for any Muslim to speak out against another Muslim. And that's where the problem really lies.
Yeah, you don't hear media reports of some clerics speaking out against that, or even so-called average Muslim families or anything.
Exactly.
And speaking of Dearborn, I mean, I guess there are places where the police won't even go in that
Exactly
city.
right. That's exactly right.
It's really sad.
Very sad.
What do you think about the our government's efforts or lack of effort, and with allies to alleviate the problem and the violence and the expansion of all this too.
That is a great concern for me. I've been to the Middle East many times, been to Israel, Jordan, Egypt, Turkey, many, many times, leading tours and things. And it is fascinating to be able to watch how Israel, how Jordan particularly see America now. And it is not very favorable. And it's because we've become very passive with the aggressive act that this radical group is exercising now. And they've literally, I think our government is causing a great problem here, because it seems as they get more quiet, then the radical end gets more vocal and more dangerous and more demonstrative with everything that they're doing, with the mass killings, with the slayings, the crucifying people in Iraq. We're hearing atrocities one after another. That is horrible. And I think from our presidents all the way down to some of our congressmen and senators, they're not speaking out. And we're continuing to fund these radical groups. And that's troubling to me, my tax dollars funding radical groups.
Yes, well, I heard that the Islamic State pulls in some $2 million a day.
Exactly right.
It's mostly from oil sales or contributions too, I guess. But how can that be? I mean, it's just appalling.
That tells you how powerful they are, because they have in Syria, particularly in Syria, ISIS, with the leader Baghdadi, literally has taken over oil wells and oil fields, and he is selling oil. At least 2 months ago, he was selling it at about $49 to $50 a barrel. Well, now oil has dropped drastically down to about $50 a barrel, so I don't know what he's selling it now for, but I'm sure it's hurting his income a little bit. So the drop in oil prices, I think, is hurting the radicals, because the oil has funded a lot of terrorism around the world. That's scary.
Now, each one of these groups does have a titular head. I mean, at least somebody who's the leader, or do they kind of act in small groups?
No, everyone has a leader, absolutely. Okay. There is a leader that focuses them, that drives them, that energizes them, absolutely.
That's what, with the population explosion of Muslims, that's 2, 3, 4, 5 times sometimes other ethnic groups.
Correct.
What does the future look like?
Well, again, that depends on where you live. If you live in Europe, it does not look very good, because that is where the Muslim population is growing the fastest in a region of the world. If you go to France, if you go to Germany, England, the Muslim birth population is 3 times that of the European that lives there. And so you can already tell that within 20 years, you could literally just completely repopulate these countries. And they are doing that, without a doubt. And then with the population comes more power, more control.
Sure, and then the places where you can vote, it's just, you're just going to...
Exactly right.
The people in the minority are going to lose.
John, do you realize that the one place that Islam is not growing, this might be surprising to you.
South America?
No, it's growing in South America.
Oh, is it?
The only place that the numbers are not showing a wide growth in population is in the Middle East.
Oh, that's interesting.
A fact.
Yeah.
That's a fact. Joel Rosenberg writes a great book, and it's entitled Inside the Revolution. And he documents for us the changes that are taking place in the Middle East. Because the Middle East has been so violent and so vicious with its Islam, it has actually turned some people away and turned them off and actually converted them to Christianity. One leading Saudi cleric in the year 2010 was speaking on Al Jazeera television, and he said that right now about 7 million Muslims are converting to Christianity every year. That's striking.
But some of them are being slaughtered by these extremist groups.
Absolutely. For converting, they're being killed.
Yeah.
And even the Christian populations are diminishing. Let's take a small town, or actually a large town in Iraq, Mosul. which is one of the oldest towns that has populated Christians, going back to the 2nd century. And we have seen unbelievable atrocities of mass killings, crucifixions in public square, people's homes being taken away from them, literally just having to flee for their life. And this is alarming. And is anyone saying anything about it? No one.
Well, you wonder who is going to do, we either need a very strong leader with a different attitude, or we need a great coalition of allies, because how can you stop this?
More and more leaders that have left the current administration are speaking out now, and they are saying that there are going to have to be boots on the ground to stop what we have created. I believe that our policies over the last 5 to 6 years have literally fueled what we're in now. We have literally pulled all of our people out over the last 5, 6 years from Afghanistan and Iraq. And that created an unbelievable vacuum.
Oh, sure.
And someone has to fill it. And so Baghdadi, by the way, do you know that Baghdadi, who is the leader of ISIS, or Islamic State, he was we had him captured in a camp. And we let him go. And when he was let out, he said to the guards, "I will see you in New York." And you know what that means.
Yes.
9/11 all over again.
Yeah.
Will there be a 9/11 that will take place in America again? Most experts are in a complete agreement that if we're not careful, we will be hit again, and it might even be worse than the 3,000 to 4,000 people that died in 9/11.
Yeah. Well, obviously the goal, too, as you mentioned
Absolutely.
earlier, is to move all of this to the United States.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
We're already seeing it in Paris, aren't we?
Oh, yes. with what
Unbelievable.
happened there.
A free press writing about the Prophet Muhammad, and literally then these radicals coming in and killing, 12, 14, 15 people, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well,
with a
there's
machine
no
gun.
sense of humor in Islam.
No, there's not. There's none. There's none.
That it just seems like such a worry, and for generations. You have kids.
I do.
And they're fairly young. Yeah, I mean, for them, or when they grow
Yes.
up and their kids,
Yes.
what is this country going to be like?
Very good question.
Especially when President Obama wrote in one of the books before he was elected, if things go wrong, we're going to side with the Muslims. I'm paraphrasing that, but it's...
And he said that in his book, The Audacity of Hope.
Uh-huh.
And when he said that, that caught a lot of people's attention, by the way.
Yeah.
And
Didn't get enough attention.
apparently not.
Yeah.
But that was a big statement. It was a
Yeah.
big statement. And it seems as if our president is siding more on the radical end of Islam
Yeah.
than ever before, and that's very concerning to me. Now we're not hearing any of the current administration use the word terrorists connected with this radical end of Islam.
Well, I heard they won't say Muslim extremists
Extremists,
either. Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
how much more extreme can you be beyond what they're doing?
Extreme to us because of just how violent and mean and vicious it is. But again, they are just going by their handbook, the Quran. And that's what's missing in the dialogue within our country and maybe even around the world, is that handbook is what's steering them and inflaming them to do the things they're doing. Not only that, but you think about the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, their unemployment rate is at about 35%.
Wow.
Now, Wahhabism is what leads and steers their brand of radical Islam, and they are able to recruit people because literally they have nothing to look forward to. They have no jobs. The young people, what do?
Yeah.
So maybe I should just belt myself up with a bomb, and die for the cause of Allah, and then march into heaven with 72 virgins.
It's inconceivable to me that any adult could think that way. I mean, you've got to have an IQ of 31. That how you could be brainwashed that much.
And I think that's the key, John, because they don't start with somebody at 17 or 18 years of age.
Oh, they start small.
They start in elementary and preschool. And if you look at the Palestinian books that these young boys and girls are learning, you look at the books in Saudi Arabia that are written by the Wahhabists, you look at the books in Iran. We haven't even mentioned Iran.
Oh.
And you're noticing that this extreme version is literally on every page of these children's books, and so they're teaching them at a very young age to be to die for the Quran, to die for Muhammad, to die for the cause, for jihad.
You talked about the millions of people, some of whom are converting to Christianity.
Right.
Are the women sometimes on the forefront of that because they're so mistreated in
I think of Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Iran is very dangerous now, and we're not paying close attention to this now. We're wanting to make deals with Iran, and they've got bombs aimed, I believe, already towards Israel. And the women are so abused there. And I believe that women are leading a big part of the Christian revival that is taking place.
I was thinking of the
there.
refusal to be Muslims. Yeah.
They don't want to. They're getting tired of the oppression, the way they're being treated, and so a missionary comes along, or somebody brings the gospel of Christ to them, and Christ loves them, shows love and compassion to them.
Sure.
Jesus raised the dead. Muhammad killed the living.
Yeah.
Quite striking.
Men, women, and children.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What, I know you're not a fortune teller because you're in a Christian religion, but what do you see happening if our country remains so passive?
I see it getting worse. And I think also from a pastor who studies the Bible and reads the Old Testament just as much as the New Testament, is dependent on the Old Testament just as much as the New Testament. I believe that the Old Testament gives us a war that will take place. And it could be even sooner than we think. In the book of Ezekiel, who is a major prophet of the Old Testament, he spoke in chapters 38, 39, and 40 of what is known as the Ezekiel War. And that is where the nations of Russia and Iran and then other Muslim nations, a coalition, literally tried to come down and destroy Israel. And miraculously they will be saved, and that will lead to setting up another event that will take place after that. But I'm of the impression that I'm seeing Russia growing in power in the region, and we're noticing that too. Everyone is. Iran is getting stronger by the day. If they don't have a nuclear weapon yet, they are right on the precipice, right there. And then we look at some of the other nations that will make up this. They're all there, and they're all in alignment. And this could be an amazing event. But because of our passive nature towards this brand of Islam, it is only emboldening them. And we're seeing it more and more as we go. And if every day we open the paper or watch the headlines on television, another territory is taken by ISIS.
Yeah.
I was on Joel's show a few months ago, and I said that ISIS will take Baghdad. They have not yet, but they are right. As of a couple months ago, they were right there at the edge of Baghdad, and that's the prize.
Sure.
That's the prize, and it could very well happen.
Well, it would seem to me, in my limited political knowledge, that Israel's got to be one of our strongest allies.
They are.
I mean, we're trying to kill Jews and Christians, and somehow we have to, of course, that antagonizes the Muslims even more. But something has to be done, and boots have to be on the ground. I mean, when you're talking about freedom, the last few wars are freedoms in
Exactly.
a little different nature, but it's the freedom of religion, freedom of speech. Something's got to happen.
Do you realize that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East?
The only one.
The
Yeah.
only democracy in the Middle East. Democracy and Islam do not go together.
No. Well, I read a long article that says there's no way a good Muslim could be a good American. And that's just a middle-of-the-road Muslim, not an extremist.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's no way you look. It listed, I don't know, 15 things you
Sure.
couldn't be because they're just diametrically opposed.
And Iran is completely against democracy. Iraq is struggling with democracy, and it could even collapse before us. Democracy is not a part of Egypt. It is not a part of Jordan, and so democracy is a great thing because it brings freedom to people. There is no freedom in Islam.
Sometimes when you were speaking there, seeing how things in this country have gone, we're struggling with democracy too.
We are.
I mean, where is it going?
Because
the freedom we used to have.
And that's the key, freedom.
Yeah.
And freedom is slowly being taken away from us because we can't even speak about the things that we need to speak about.
Yeah.
When somebody speaks about anything that's politically incorrect, we have an outcry. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and who's making those judgments too?
Exactly.
Who has the power or think they have the power? And of course, the media do not help.
They think
anyway,
they do.
just in closing, I hope you'll come back soon and we'll talk about what has either progressed or retrogressed.
Yes.
But it's a sad thing, and hope you folks out there who are into prayer as seriously will daily keep this all in mind. It just can't be done without supreme help.
Absolutely.
So, Pastor Dave, it's good to see you.
Thank you for
See you
having
again.
me again.
Oh, my pleasure. And that's it for today. Hate to see that go because we could talk a long time with that, and how you got all your knowledge is interesting. Someday we'll just have to talk about the life of the Prophet Muhammad himself.
I would enjoy that very much.
Of course, then we might be targets.
We could very well be. And every time I'm on a program, I always get a letter, by the way, an email.
Oh,
from
I'm
a
sure you
Muslim.
will.
I do.
Well, we'll keep you in our prayers.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, we'll take a break until another show, but thanks a lot for joining us on Calaveras Living. See you next time.